Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, who of course is a certified financial planner, and you can find the link in the description below for information on that. But let's get into this very interesting news regarding labor, because obviously we've been talking about jobs numbers for years, and obviously with the whole COVID pandemic insanity, jobs numbers have definitely cratered this year. And as the Zero Hedge article says, massive labor income losses worldwide as recovery falters. And we're going to get into that and more because the news out of this article is absolutely insane. The numbers coming out, the latest numbers are just ridiculous and should be affecting most of the people in the United States at this point in time. But before we get into that, make sure to hit the like button, share on social media to get around the shadow banning, and of course, join our newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Takes 2 seconds to join. All you have to do is put your email in, and it really helps keep us up and running. It's totally free. And of course, you can also support us financially, as we are completely demonetized by YouTube. So we're hit pretty hard. So you can find us on GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. Just $1 or more a month makes a huge difference, folks. So we really do appreciate anything you can do to keep the truth alive. As well as find us on Flote.app, LBRY, and BitChute, all the alternatives, because we won't be on YouTube past November 5th of 2020. We don't have a choice, so we're going over there, and we hope you join us and support free information online. And of course, you could become a client at Tim Picciott's at thelibertyadvisor.com. Let's get right into this article here. As it says, as I mentioned, massive labor income losses worldwide as recovery falters. And as the article goes into, the latest data compiled by the International Labor Organization sheds new light on COVID-19's devastating impact, more like the government's devastating impact, on the labor market, reveals a massive drop in labor income and hours for workers worldwide. Global labor income plunged 10.7% or $3.5 trillion in the first 9 months of 2020, compared with the same period in 2019, ILO's new report found, which is one of the first measurements to quantify the deep economic scarring that has left the global economy paralyzed. The figure excludes income derived by governments to compensate for labor loss during the pandemic. The report, titled ILO Monitor COVID-19 and the World of Work 6th edition, was published on Wednesday, September 23rd, notes how global labor hour losses in the first 9 months of 2020 have been considerably larger than the estimates from the previous report issued in late June. The report found the largest income loss was primarily in lower middle income countries, where the labor income losses reached 15.1%. And I quote, "Workplace closures continue to disrupt labor markets around the world, leading to working hour losses that are higher than previously estimated," ILO said. The United Nations agency said global working hour losses are expected to remain elevated in third quarter 2020 at 12.1%, or equivalent to 345 million full-time equivalent jobs based on a 48-hour working week. The revised downside projection for a fourth quarter suggests a more pessimistic outlook for the global economy is ahead. Of course, the flu season, they'll use that as an excuse to shut everything down again. ILO's baseline scenario for working hour losses in the fourth quarter is negative 8.6%. The most optimistic is plus 5.7%, while the most pessimistic is down 18%. And I want to scroll way down the article here to mention a really crazy stat that Tim's going to get into right away. It says a record of 25% of all personal income in the U.S. is derived from the government via stimulus programs. Without stimulus, the economy craters. And then just imagine what the employment is like if you actually consider the labor force participation rate. Tim, this is insane. This is absolutely insane and affects millions and millions of people, obviously. People really are feeling the strain of this government shutdown. It's not a coronavirus shutdown. That's a little tricky lie and trick that they're trying to play on everyone. It's a scheme. The government has locked down humanity worldwide and is destroying all income to make people dependent. What do you think of these latest numbers, Tim?
Well, first off, basically all the government numbers are rigged. I actually wrote a book called How It's Rigged, the Economy, where I went into detail how they rigged the unemployment rate and the inflation rate and the GDP data. So if anyone wants to get that, the number you want to text is 71441. You put that in the number line, and then in the body of the message, type Liberty Advisor, one word, Liberty Advisor, and then you'll get that free 18-page ebook. But what I want to mention going along with that is that Yeah, we have 25% of all personal income is derived from the government. I mean, how sustainable is that? I mean, the only reason this is even able to happen is because the U.S. is the world reserve currency. But this is something that not only are we not trying to protect our job, and not let's say our, hate saying things like that, but we're not. The only thing the Federal Reserve should be doing basically is trying to protect the status of the fact that we are the world reserve currency. Because if you're China, for instance, if you're one of these other countries, and all of a sudden you have to you're making all these different widgets, and then you take bonds from the United States to buy those widgets, we're getting real goods while they're getting IOUs. And so what we're doing is we're getting really cocky with this, and now we're just issuing more IOUs because the rates are so low. But the only reason the rates are low is because the Federal Reserve is the one who are buying up the bonds. And so we've also seen that we've had somewhere along the neighborhood of almost $20 trillion in stimulus, $9 trillion coming from central banks, about $11 trillion coming from fiscal stimulus, aka the governments. And right now that you have the Federal Reserve in a position where they're saying, hey, we want you to spend more money, Congress, Congress, you should be doing everything you can to increase fiscal stimulus, and we've got your back. Well, first off, the whole reason there's a Fed supposedly is because there's supposed to be an independence between what's going on at the Treasury and what's going on at the Fed. And now you've got the situation where Steven Mnuchin and the Treasury Secretary, former Goldman Sachs guy, is talking with Jerome Powell, basically every day. And that is something that shouldn't happen. I mean, we shouldn't even have a Federal Reserve. I mean, right now we're kind of getting into points that the larger issue is that basically it's a giant high-tech slave system. If you guys want to see exactly why it's a slave system, you can see a video I made 4 years ago on my YouTube channel, so the Liberty Advisor YouTube channel, where it's called "Why We're All Slaves to Central Banks," and you can see that for your own. But there's no way to wean ourselves off of this. Like what and I don't even know if this even counts things like government jobs. So I mean, I don't think this even counts people that are employed.
It really does remind me, and if John Snyson were here, he'd bring up Norway for sure, as he often does. And it really does remind me of how things went in Norway, and it's just like the level of taxation there is insane. Of course, you can go subscribe to Tim's The Liberty Advisor YouTube channel. Make sure to do that. It does help. And obviously, you could become a client of Tim's by going to thelibertyadvisor.com. But Tim, I wanted to ask, before we wrap any of this up, can this snowball into double the unemployment, triple the unemployment, just bigger jobs numbers going to the government, GDP coming from the government at the end of the day, with the flu season coming up, which obviously they're gonna the flu numbers are gonna be super low, and they're gonna blame everything on COVID in order to keep things locked down, keep more control over the masses, and benefit as a government power control complex going forward. Can we see the job or unemployment numbers double or triple going into this year?
Well, I mean, it really just depends on how you count people as being unemployed, because they constantly change the goalpost on what it means to be unemployed. So if you take what it means to be unemployed back in the 80s versus today, it's completely different. And so, let's say you're working, getting a job paying $100,000 a year as an engineer, and then all of a sudden you've lost your job, and now you've got, 3 jobs. Maybe you're, working at Uber, and you're doing, I don't know, I'm trying to think of jobs because so many have been destroyed. But let's say you've got 3 more entry-level jobs, and now you're making $30,000 a year versus 100. Well, now it would actually count as 3 jobs to the system versus 1, and it actually would show that the numbers are better off, even though that you yourself are much worse off. Or or once you've been unemployed, I forgot the amount of weeks. I think it's 99 weeks. Now you're not counted as being unemployed before. Or it used to be like, hey, you've got an engineering degree, but you're waiting, tables, or you're working at McDonald's. Well, then since you are so underrepresented by what you should be doing versus what you are doing, then that in the old days used to be counted unemployed, whereas today that counted as being employed. And so there's so many different ways that they rig these numbers that who knows. I mean, you could have a situation. This is something I was writing about on my Facebook like 10 years ago, talking about how you could have a situation where you could have 30-40 million people unemployed and technically have an unemployment rate of 0, just based upon how they rig these numbers. Now, it'll probably never actually be 0, but then again, no one ever thought that you'd have negative oil rates either. So it just goes to how they rig these numbers, how to understand it. But at the end of the day, the government is there to make people dependent, and then because then once they have you by the what, then you're going to keep voting for who's ever going to give you the most amount of goodies. So they have an economic incentive to make you beholden to them and to make you poor and to make you weak, because the thing is, it's not about helping people, it's not about building people up. I mean, instead of giving people food stamps stamps, why don't you take that same money and divert it to, here's some land and community gardens, or there's so many different ways that they could do things, or eating healthy. But it's all about, sorry.
Well, it's just, this is criminal. I mean, and I always hear people say, all these people on like teenagers usually on like Twitter that unfortunately get way too much power and way too much viewership on places like Twitter, saying things like, it's not right what capitalists are doing to us. They're looking at economy over the good of the masses. And I'm like, wait a second, do you know what the economy is? The economy over the good of the masses. First of all, the capitalists that are giving everyone jobs are the people that are making sure people have money in their pocket, while the government's stealing from all these businesses and all these employees and all these poor people and pushing them into further servitude. Obviously, the government won't relent the power that they have. But to say that all people like me, we're just thinking of the economy over the good of the masses. I'm like, the good of the masses, quote unquote, or the good of the people is that the economy is good, is that you don't destroy the economy because millions end up impoverished, and then you have a health crisis on your hands because no one can afford medicine and everyone's on the street and eating bad food that makes them unhealthy, and it just goes on and on. The issue is central banks. The issue is government. It's not businesses that are trying to lift millions out of poverty. It's a government that's trying to crush a million people and push millions into poverty. So, Tim, final words as we wrap this up. Of course, you could become a client of Tim's, as I mentioned before, at thelibertyadvisor.com. Highly recommend. Just really good record, really impeccable record. But Tim, any final words as we close this off?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to, touch on the last point that you brought up, that, that with the economy, there are real lives that are attached to the economy. I'm reading an article right now that says military suicides are up as much as 20%. And those are people that have already come back from wars, and active duty is up almost 30% suicides this year. So, I mean, that's just within the military, not making any comment on, on the military itself, just saying that, not like Joe Biden, who video surfaced of him calling them stupid. I'm not even sure if I can say it on YouTube over here, what we're allowed to say.
Where he monetized, he said stupid bastards, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. But he's trying to be one of the boys and kind of talk like them. So I know that's going to be the talking point. But there is real consequences that you and I have been talking about since day one, back in February, back in March, of how that there's going to be more deaths, more divorce, more everything going associated with this, which then has trickle down effects for people's kids and for all throughout society. And so I think that the death toll from that is going to probably far surpass whatever the COVID-19 death toll is, and not that we can even trust those numbers anyways, of false positives and just attributing it to
only 6% are actually legitimate, actually caused by COVID. The rest are like heart attacks and all sorts of stuff that any kind of cold or flu could have triggered. And of course, Bill Gates, on top of that, even said in April that the shutdown will kill way more people than the lockdowns will kill way more people than the virus itself. But we need to keep the lockdowns going to save lives. It was like total Orwellian doublespeak. But yeah, that's what happens when you destroy an economy and push millions into poverty. Poverty and mental health crises are no joke, and that's going to kill way more people than the virus.
Yeah, and while people are today outraged over Trump's taxes, I would love to see what Bill Gates' taxes look like. I mean, with all of his charity, because what he's doing is using charitable giving to then give to these different charities that so the charities that then are amplifying his other pharmaceutical investments. So you can really it's really hard to tell the genuineness of his. But I would love to see what all these people, all these bigwig other billionaires criticizing Trump over his taxes, what their taxes look like, especially the ones who've given away their money. And if you sitting at home are sitting on highly appreciated assets, that is something that I work with people using the strategies of the millionaires and billionaires to basically have them legally avoid taxes, because there's nothing illegal about avoiding taxes. I mean, evading taxes, yeah, that's illegal and that gets you in the hot water. But if Trump is out there only avoiding taxes, and this is a whole other subject, and not to get down that rabbit hole. But anyways, I appreciate you having me on, and you guys can go to thelibertyadvisor.com, and also every video I do with Josh is also on podcast audio format as well, and all your favorite platforms. Just type in the Liberty Advisor Show or something like that, and you'll get a hold of that. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with avoiding slavery, and good on anyone that does that. I don't know what the big deal is. I've seen a lot of people, including some friends of ours, Tim, in independent media, that are freaking out over Trump only paying $750 in taxes.
Yeah, it's called real estate depreciation. I mean, it's not it's not rocket science.
And honestly, good for him. That's one thing I'll give him credit for. Certainly not the whole problem with everyone being impoverished and central planning skyrocketing, the Fed being given so much more power. not nationalized. Look at our recent interview, or look at Tim's recent interview with G. Edward Griffin on that subject if you want to go into that. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone joining us. We got to go, but make sure to hit that like button, share on social media to get around the shadow banning. Join us on Flote.app, LBRY, and BitChute. We're really growing on all those platforms right now, so I really highly recommend you go over there. We're getting more views in some cases on that platform than this one with 153,000 subscribers. It's ridiculous. Also, make sure to find us on GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. We are 100% viewer funded. I've been completely bankrupted by all this. Thank you so much to everyone who's helped out recently. I really, truly appreciate you guys. You are the change you wish to see in the world, and you are really driving the message of freedom and truth forward. So I really appreciate you guys being the heartbeat of independent media in these difficult times, as well as join our newsletter at www.iambanned.com. And as always, like I said, thelibertyadvisor.com, link below as well. Until next time, my friends, this is Josh Sigurdson and Tim Picciott signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. My friends, it is go time. We are completely demonetized on YouTube, and we depend on the viewer to stay alive and spread the message of freedom and truth. So check those links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, anything you guys could do to help keep independent media alive helps enormously in helping spread this message to the masses. So make sure to check those links. Donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen or below. We really appreciate anything you could do to keep us alive. You could check those links below for Cointree as well, where you can find other cryptocurrencies that you can donate and keep WAM alive. Find us on flote.app, flote.app, as well as BitChute and LBRY and Minds. We're on all the other platforms. We are leaving YouTube soon, so make sure to find us at those sites, because it's the only way we can keep talking to you, the masses, the great people that actually care about the future of free humanity. Also, join our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Anything helps at this point, guys. We need to support free information online. This is the most difficult time in our history, and it takes a lot of hard work to keep our message alive in the face of great evils that have taken over the propaganda news on television as well as on YouTube, where YouTube decides what you can or cannot see. We need your help, my friends. So I really appreciate anything you guys can do. Check those links. There's many ways you can help. Until next time, though, thanks, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.